Christopher Edward Nolan, CBE, is a British-American filmmaker who is known for making personal, distinctive films within the Hollywood mainstream. His 10 films have grossed over US $4.7 billion worldwide and garnered a total of 34 Oscar nominations on 10 wins. Born and raised in London, Nolan developed an interest in filmmaking from a young age. After studying English literature at University College London, he made his feature debut with Following. Nolan gained international recognition with his second film, Memento, for which he was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. He transitioned from independent to studio filmmaking with Insomnia and found further critical and commercial success with The Dark Knight trilogy, The Prestige, and Inception, which received 8 Oscar nominations, including for Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay. This was followed by Interstellar, Dunkirk, which earned him Academy Award nominations for Best Picture and Best Director, and the upcoming Tenet. Nolan's films are typically rooted in epistemological and metaphysical themes, exploring human morality, the construction of time, and the malleable nature of memory and personal identity. His work is permeated by unconventional narrative structures, practical special effects, experimental soundscapes, large-format film photography, and materialistic perspectives. He has co-written several of his films with his brother Jonathan and runs the production company Syncope Incorporated with his wife Emma Thomas. Nolan has received many awards and honors. Time magazine named him one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2015. In 2019, he was appointed Commander of the Order of the British Empire for his services to film. In addition to his filmmaking, Nolan is an advocate for film preservation and the analog medium. Nolan was born in Westminster, London, and grew up in Highgate. His father, Brendan James Nolan, was a British advertising executive who worked as a creative director. His mother, Christina, was an American flight attendant who would later work as an English teacher. Nolan's childhood was split between London and Evanston, Illinois, and he has both British and US citizenship. He has an older brother, Matthew Francis Nolan, a convicted criminal, and a younger brother, Jonathan. Growing up, Nolan was particularly influenced by the work of Ridley Scott and the science fiction films 2001, A Space Odyssey and Star Wars. He began making films at age 7, borrowing his father's Super 8 camera and shooting short films with his action figures. These films included a stop-motion animation homage to Star Wars called Space Wars. He cast his brother Jonathan and built sets from clay, flour, egg boxes and toilet rolls. His uncle, who worked at NASA building guidance systems for the Apollo rockets, sent him some launch footage. I refilmed them off the screen and cut them in, thinking no one would notice, Nolan later remarked. From the age of 11, he aspired to be a professional filmmaker. In his teenage years, Nolan started making films with Adrian and Rocco Bellic. Nolan and Rocco co-directed the surreal 8mm Tarantella, which was shown on Image Union, an independent film and video showcase on the public broadcasting service. Nolan was educated at Haileybury and Imperial Service College, an independent school in Hertford Heath, Hertfordshire, and later read English literature at University College London. Opting out of a traditional film education, he pursued a degree in something unrelated because it gives a different take on things. He chose UCL specifically for its filmmaking facilities, which comprised a Steenbeck editing suite and 16mm film cameras. Nolan was president of the Union's Film Society, and with Emma Thomas he screened 35mm feature films during the school year and used the money earned to produce 16mm films over the summers. After earning his bachelor's degree in English literature in 1993, Nolan worked as a script reader, camera operator, and director of corporate videos and industrial films. In 1995, he began work on the short film Larceny, which was filmed over a weekend in black and white with limited equipment and a small cast and crew. Funded by Nolan and shot with the Society's equipment, it appeared at the Cambridge Film Festival in 1996 and is considered one of UCL's best shorts. He filmed a third short, Doodlebug, about a man chasing an insect around a flat with a shoe, only to discover when killing it that it is a miniature of himself. Nolan had written the script while a student at UCL. During this period in his career, Nolan had little or no success getting his projects off the ground. He later recalled the stack of rejection letters that greeted his early forays into making films, adding there's a very limited pool of finance in the UK. To be honest, it's a very clubby kind of place, never had any support whatsoever from the British film industry. In 1998, Nolan released his first feature, Following. He wrote, directed, photographed and edited the film, which depicts an unemployed young writer who trails strangers through London, hoping they will provide material for his first novel, but is drawn into a criminal underworld when he fails to keep his distance. The film was inspired by Nolan's experience of living in London and having his apartment burgled. There is an interesting connection between a stranger going through your possessions and the concept of following people at random through a crowd. Both take you beyond the boundaries of ordinary social relations. Co-produced by Nolan with Emma Thomas and Jeremy Theobald, it was funded by him and made on a modest budget of £3,000. Most of the cast and crew were Nolan's friends, and shooting took place on weekends over the course of a year. To conserve film stock, each scene in the film was rehearsed extensively to ensure that the first or second take could be used in the final edit. Following won several awards during its festival run and was well received by critics. The New Yorker wrote that it echoed Hitchcock classics, but was leaner and meaner. Janet Maslin of the New York Times was impressed with its spare look and agile handheld camera work, saying, as a result, the actors convincingly carry off the before, during, and after modes that the film eventually and artfully weaves together. On 11 December 2012 it was released on DVD and Blu-ray as part of the Criterion Collection. Following success led to Nolan being afforded the opportunity to make Memento, which became his breakthrough film. The synopsis came from his brother Jonathan, who pitched the idea to Nolan during a road trip about a man with anterograde amnesia who uses notes and tattoos to hunt for his wife's murderer. Jonathan worked the idea into a short story, Memento Mori, while Nolan developed it into a screenplay that told the story in reverse. Aaron Ryder, an executive for Newmarket Films, said it was perhaps the most innovative script I had ever seen. The film was optioned and given a budget of $4.5 million, with Guy Pearce and Carrie-Anne Moss in the starring roles. Memento premiered at the Venice International Film Festival in September 2000 to critical acclaim. Joe Morgenstern of The Wall Street Journal wrote in his review, "I can't remember when a movie has seemed so clever, strangely affecting and slyly funny at the very same time." Basil Smith, in the book The Philosophy of Neo-Noir, draws a comparison with John Locke's An Essay Concerning Human Understanding, which argues that conscious memories constitute our identities, a theme that Nolan explores in the film. The film was a box office success and received a number of accolades, including Academy Award and Golden Globe Award nominations for its screenplay, Independent Spirit Awards for Best Director and Best Screenplay, and a Directors Guild of America Award nomination. Memento was considered by numerous critics to be one of the best films of the 2000s. In 2017, the film was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the United States National Film Registry, being deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. Impressed by his work on Memento, Steven Soderbergh recruited Nolan to direct the psychological thriller Insomnia, starring Academy Award winners Al Pacino, Robin Williams, and Hilary Swank. Warner Bros. Initially wanted a more seasoned director, but Soderbergh and his Section 8 Productions fought for Nolan, as well as his choice of cinematographer and editor. With a $46 million budget, it was described as a much more conventional Hollywood film than anything done before. A remake of the 1997 Norwegian film of the same name, Insomnia is about two Los Angeles detectives sent to a northern Alaskan town to investigate the murder of a local teenager. It received positive reviews from critics and performed well at the box office, earning $113 million worldwide. Film critic Roger Ebert praised the film for introducing new perspectives and ideas on the issues of morality and guilt, stating that unlike most remakes, the Nolan Insomnia is not a pale retread, but a re-examination of the material, like a new production of a good play. Eric Skjoldbjerg, the director of the original film, was satisfied with Nolan's version, calling it a well-crafted, smart film with a really good director handling it. Richard Schickel of Time deemed Insomnia a worthy successor to Memento and a triumph of atmosphere over a none too mysterious mystery. After Insomnia, Nolan planned a Howard Hughes biographical film starring Jim Carrey. He wrote a screenplay, which he said was the best script I've ever written, but when he learned that Martin Scorsese was making a Hughes biopic, he reluctantly tabled his script and moved on to other projects. After turning down an offer to direct the historical epic Troy, Nolan worked on adapting Ruth Rendell's crime novel The Keys to the Street into a screenplay that he planned to direct for Fox Searchlight Pictures, but eventually left the project, citing the similarities to his previous films. Nolan was also adapting a film version of The Prisoner, but later dropped out of the project. In early 2003, Nolan approached Warner Bros. With the idea of making a new Batman film. Fascinated by the character and story, he wanted to make a film grounded in a relatable world more reminiscent of a classical drama than a comic book fantasy. Filming took place in 2004, and Nolan relied heavily on traditional stunts and miniature effects, with computer-generated imagery being used in a minimal capacity. Batman Begins, the biggest project Nolan had undertaken to that point, premiered in June 2005 to critical acclaim and commercial success. Starring Christian Bale in the title role, along with Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, Morgan Freeman, and Liam Neeson, the film revived the franchise, heralding a trend towards darker films that rebooted backstories. Praised for its psychological depth and contemporary relevance, Kyle Smith of the New York Post called it a wake-up call to the people who keep giving us cute capers about men in tights. It wipes the smirk off the face of the superhero movie. Batman Begins was the 8th highest-grossing film of 2005 in the United States and the year's 9th highest-grossing film worldwide. It was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Cinematography and 3 BAFTA awards. On the film's 10th anniversary, Forbes published an article describing its lasting influence. Reboot became part of our modern vocabulary, and superhero origin stories became increasingly en vogue for the genre. The phrase dark and gritty likewise joined the cinematic lexicon, influencing our perception of different approaches to storytelling, not only in the comic book film genre, but in all sorts of other genres as well. Before returning to the Batman franchise for a sequel, Nolan directed, co-wrote, and produced The Prestige, an adaptation of the Christopher Priest novel about two rival 19th-century magicians. The screenplay was the result of an intermittent, 5-year collaboration between him and his brother Jonathan, who had begun writing it already in 2001. Nolan initially intended to make the film as early as 2003, but had postponed the project after agreeing to make Batman Begins. Starring Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale in the lead roles, The Prestige received critical acclaim and earned over $109 million worldwide. Roger Ebert described it as quite a movie, atmospheric, obsessive, almost satanic, and Kenneth Turan of the Los Angeles Times called it an ambitious, unnerving melodrama. Philip French wrote in his review for The Guardian, in addition to the intellectual or philosophical excitement it engenders, The Prestige is gripping, suspenseful, mysterious, moving and often darkly funny. The Prestige also received Academy Award nominations for Best Cinematography and Best Art Direction. In 2006, Nolan announced that the follow-up to Batman Begins would be called The Dark Knight. Approaching the sequel, Nolan wanted to expand on the noirish quality of the first film by broadening the canvas and taking on the dynamic of a story of the city, a large crime story where you're looking at the police, the justice system, the vigilante, the poor people, the rich people, the criminals. Released in July 2008 to great critical acclaim, The Dark Knight has been cited as one of the best films of the 2000s and one of the best superhero films ever made. Manohla Dargis of the New York Times found the film to be of higher artistic merit than many Hollywood blockbusters. Pitched at the divide between art and industry, poetry, and entertainment, it goes darker and deeper than any Hollywood movie of its comic book kind. Ebert expressed a similar point of view, describing it as a haunted film that leaps beyond its origins and becomes an engrossing tragedy. The Dark Knight set a number of box office records during its theatrical run, earning $534, $858, $444 in North America, and $469, $700,000 abroad, for a worldwide total of $1,004, $558, $444. At the 81st Academy Awards, the film was nominated for 8 Oscars, winning 2, the Academy Award for Best Sound Editing, and a posthumous Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for Heath Ledger. Nolan received many awards and nominations for his work on the film. In 2018, Bill Jabiri of The Village Voice wrote, "Its politics have been discussed ad infinitum. Its stylistic influence has become ubiquitous, then past, then somehow aspirational. The Dark Knight is perhaps the most powerful exploration of guilt the modern American blockbuster has given us." After The Dark Knight's success, Warner Bros. Signed Nolan to direct Inception. Nolan also wrote and co-produced the film, described as a contemporary sci-fi actioner set within the architecture of the mind. Starring a large ensemble cast led by Leonardo DiCaprio, the film became a critical and commercial success upon its release in July 2010. Richard Roeper of the Chicago Sun-Times awarded the film a perfect score of A+ and called it one of the best movies of the century. Mark Kermode named it the best film of 2010, stating Inception is proof that people are not stupid, that cinema is not trash, and that it is possible for blockbusters and art to be the same thing. The film ended up grossing over $820 million worldwide and was nominated for 8 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay. It won the award for Best Cinematography, Best Sound Mixing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Visual Effects. Nolan was also nominated for BAFTA and Golden Globe Awards, among other accolades. In 2012, Nolan directed his third and final Batman film, The Dark Knight Rises, with Christian Bale reprising the title role. Although Nolan was initially hesitant about returning to the series, he agreed to come back after developing a story with his brother and David S. Goyer that he felt would end the series on a high note. The film was released in July 2012 to positive reviews. Andrew O'Hara of Salon called it arguably the biggest, darkest, most thrilling and disturbing, and utterly balls-out spectacle ever created for the screen, further describing the work as auteurist spectacle on a scale never before possible and never before attempted. Christy Lemire of the Associated Press wrote in her review that Nolan concluded his trilogy in a typically spectacular, ambitious fashion, but disliked the overloaded story and excessive grimness. Like its predecessor, the film was a box office success, becoming the 13th film to reach the billion-dollar mark. During a midnight showing of the film at the Century 16 Cinema in Aurora, Colorado, a gunman opened fire inside the theater, killing 12 people and injuring 58 others. Nolan released a statement to the press expressing his condolences for the victims of what he described as a senseless tragedy. During story discussions for The Dark Knight Rises in 2010, Goyer told Nolan of his idea to present Superman in a modern context. Impressed with Goyer's first contact concept, Nolan pitched the idea for Man of Steel to Warner Bros., who hired Nolan to produce and Zack Snyder to direct. Starring Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Kevin Costner, Russell Crowe, and Michael Shannon, Man of Steel grossed more than $660 million at the worldwide box office, but received a divided critical reaction. Despite the mixed reviews, Nolan was thoroughly impressed by Snyder's work, saying that the director knocked it out of the park and that he believed the film would have the same potential to excite audiences as when he himself saw the Christopher Reeve version in 1978. Nolan next directed, wrote, and produced the science fiction film Interstellar. The first drafts of the script were written by Jonathan Nolan, and it was originally to be directed by Steven Spielberg. Based on the scientific theories of theoretical physicist Kip Thorne, the film follows a group of astronauts who travel through a wormhole in search of a new home for humanity. Interstellar starred Matthew McConaughey, Anne Hathaway, Jessica Chastain, Bill Irwin, Michael Caine, and Ellen Burstyn, and was Nolan's first collaboration with cinematographer Hoyt van Hoytema. Interstellar was released in November 2014 to largely positive reviews and strong box office results, grossing over $670 million worldwide. A.O. Scott wrote, in his review for the New York Times, Interstellar, full of visual dazzle, thematic ambition, is a sweeping, futuristic adventure driven by grief, dread and regret. Documentary filmmaker Tony Myers said of the film, "I loved it because it tackled the most difficult part of human exploration, which is that it's a multi-generational journey. It was a real work of art." Interstellar was particularly praised for its scientific accuracy, which led to the publication of 2 scientific papers, and the American Journal of Physics calling for it to be shown in school science lessons. It was named one of the best films of the year by the American Film Institute. At the 87th Academy Awards, the film won Best Visual Effects and received 4 other nominations: Best Original Score, Best Sound Mixing, Best Sound Editing, and Best Production Design. In 2014, Nolan and Emma Thomas also served as executive producers on Transcendence, the directorial debut of Nolan's longtime cinematographer Wally Pfister. The film was released to mostly unfavorable reviews and disappointing box office results. In the mid-2010s, Nolan took part in several ventures for film preservation and distribution of the films of lesser-known filmmakers. His production company, Syncope, formed a joint venture with Zeitgeist Films to release Blu-ray editions of Zeitgeist's prestige titles. As part of the Blu-ray release of the animation films of the brothers Quay, Nolan directed the documentary short Quay. He also initiated a theatrical tour showcasing the Quays in absentia, The Comb, and Street of Crocodiles. The program and Nolan's short received critical acclaim, with IndieWire writing in their review that the brothers will undoubtedly have hundreds, if not thousands, more fans because of Nolan, and for that the Quay brothers in 35mm will always be one of latter's most important contributions to cinema. An advocate for the survival of the analog medium, Nolan and visual artist Asita Dean invited representatives from leading American film archives, laboratories, and presenting institutions to participate in an informal summit entitled Reframing the Future of Film at the Getty Museum in March 2015. Subsequent events were held at Tate Modern in London, Museo Tomeo in Mexico City, and Tata Theatre in Mumbai. In 2015, Nolan also joined the board of directors of the Film Foundation, a US-based non-profitable organization dedicated to film preservation, and was appointed, along with Martin Scorsese, by the Library of Congress to serve on the National Film Preservation Board as DGA representatives. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe